Hello, 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 and welcome to this coffee chat with a race and ethnicity expert. My name is Aleya Harris, and this is my beautiful husband, Brandon Harris. Awesome. And we are here today to have an honest chat. It's a chat mostly because we understand that there's a lot of information going on right now, and there's a lot of ways that you can go about educating yourself, especially if you are new to allyship. And we wanted to provide a safe place, but also a framework-based place. So if you know anything about me, or we had a chance to work together at all, you know, I am a big fan of a good framework. And I'm like, oh, well, there's lots of opinions going on about race and what to do, and lots of long lists of books and articles, but I use all of my work based off of marketing frameworks that work. What are the racial frameworks that will help us understand the context with which we live in? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even have to look that far to find someone who can help, because I happen to live with a race and ethnicity expert and a college professor. So before I let Brandon introduce himself, for those of you who may not have had the opportunity to connect with me, and I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, my name is Aleya Harris. I am the owner of Flourish Marketing, which is a marketing company designed to help catering, wedding, and event professionals get and keep a consistent stream of clients. So I'm all about messaging, I'm all about story, and that's another reason why I was prompted to nudge my husband here to jump on a call with me today. Brandon, you want to tell the fine people a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everybody. So when I'm not in front of the camera with my wife, just kidding, this is rare. I'm a sociology professor and lecturer at Cal State Northridge and a couple colleges in the Los Angeles Community College District. So that is one umbrella, and within that umbrella, we have multiple campuses and sites. So I'm at anywhere between LA Mission College, LA Trade Tech, LA Valley, also a single district college, College of the Canyon. So I'm around when it comes to teaching sociology, race and ethnicity. I teach that course. Critical thinking, so I might throw in some theories relative to that subject. Teach a women's studies class, shock and awe. Right, so we'll jump into that, and I'm currently approaching my last 2 semesters in my doctoral program, where I will just be in my data collecting process, and 2021 will be the year.
Tell the people, first of all, I want to say, hey, Amy, hey, Peggy, y'all my girls, thank you so much for coming. If you're here, type in the chat who you are, where you're from, and don't forget that we have a Q&A set up, so we're going to be answering questions at the end, so don't forget to type in the Q&A section. But tell people you are a doctoral candidate, which means that he is oh so very close to having the DR period front of his name. I'm so excited. I'm so proud. So tell people what your dissertation is in a nutshell, not
the boring one, not the one that we're standing up and you start ignoring me like, oh, we can tell this guy really loves this topic. It happens.
I never do that. But just, yeah, the short version.
Oh, you telling on yourself, because I wasn't even hadn't even had you in mind, but thanks.
The short version of what your dissertation is.
All right, so in a nutshell, I'll just give you the title. So the title is Representation as Motivation. And I'm looking at shared identities, specifically the interaction with African-American male professors and African-American male students, and how that image, that representation can serve as motivation, inspiration to add to the success rates of that demographic. And so, yeah.
That was good. And
Was
it's fascinating. Even it is fascinating. And I'd like to say, hey there, we have Michelle. Thank you for coming and joining us from Austin. Glenda, oh, I'm so glad you were able to make it, Glenda. I haven't talked to you in a long time except for Facebook. I'm very glad that you're here. Leah, welcome. Selena, so great to see you in the middle of moving. Lots of moving happening today. Thank you so much for coming to everyone that's joining us. And I see Kathy, my beloved Kathy, and Kay. Oh, you guys are awesome. Hey, Cindy from San Francisco, welcome. Oh, Alan, Amber, hugs right back to you, right back to you. Jamie and Ruth and
woo,
Sean, woo, woohoo. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, if you have questions as we go along, we're gonna type them in the Q&A. I have my beautiful, gorgeous, capable, intelligent assistant, Gina, here as Flourish Marketing. She's gonna be compiling all of your questions for us, both from Facebook Live and from our Zoom call. So I have my tablet in front of me and I'm gonna be checking them all out. I can't say that we're gonna be looking at the chat the whole time because we got stuff to talk about. So without further ado, I'm gonna say hey to Aaron first.
But we will be looking at question marks, so we'll skim, and if we see a question mark, we'll try to get to the question.
Yeah, well, maybe,
okay.
Because Gina's gonna help.
Okay.
Yeah, he wants to make sure, he's a teacher, right? He wants to make sure everyone's questions get answered. So everyone's questions will get answered. If you have a straight up question, and you're not just like, hey girl, hey, or hey boy, hey, you can put it in the Q&A, and then that'll be the fastest way to make sure that we get to your question. Okay, so you ready, Professor Harris?
Let's go.
Are you ready? Okay, so the first question that I have is about something that you talk about in our household a lot, which is critical race theory, CRT, critical race theory. And this is a theory that I had to really expose myself to as I've been trying to figure out how to best communicate from about systemic racism. So can you talk about what critical race theory is and help us understand why it's important in the context that we currently find ourselves in?
Okay, so critical race theory is a theory made popular first in the criminal justice system. And what it does is it helps shine a light on the unjust treatment that is obviously relative to race matters. So that's the theory. And before I elaborate, it's important to focus on what I mean by obvious race matters in the criminal justice system. So that can look like two different people committing the same crime, same time. Both do not have pre-existing cases or priors, if you will, but they're sentenced differently. And they're same age, minor or something like that, but they're sentenced differently, and we can't understand why the same judge sentenced these two different youth in a different way, but the only common denominator was race. So it'll be situations like that where that the critical race theory was made popular. And before I move on, I just want to make sure that I shout out a few notable critical race theorists, which is Derek Bell, Patricia Williams, Richard Delgado, and Kimberly Crenshaw, to name a few, because so there's a lot more. So those individuals definitely make it makes us want to dive into it more. And what the critical race theory allows us to do is shines a light on systemic racism. So systemic racism is that the racism that is embedded in the fabric of systems such as education, the legal system, where the origin of that theory, and also financial systems, right? Who gets loans, who doesn't, right? Based on the inherent belief that one group of people should deserve it more than another group of people, right? So
how does racism become systemic? Because I understand I theoretically, this is not Aleya Harris, but I don't like someone because of the color of their skin. So then that makes me racist, very simplistic terms, right? But then how does that same concept get woven into systems, and why is systemic racism a bad thing?
Well, so yeah, you're definitely correct on that the basic framework on racism. So according to sociology, racism is the inherent belief that one race is inferior or superior to another, right? So even if you believe that another race is superior than you, you're being racist on yourself. Believe it or not, right?
Oh, wow.
It is when you
Wait, say that again. Say that one more time for the people in the back. Say that one more time.
So according to sociology, racism is the belief. So it's an internal belief that that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. So that one's a tricky one. He said superior or inferior. Yes. So even if I play into the game of someone or some group of people is better than me, then you might as well just be racist right along with the people that hate you. You might as well hang out. You might as well hang out with them. Like, man, me too, man. I don't like me either.
I don't like me either.
So it's tricky like that, and it's when there's that that power dynamic when it comes to race. When that exists, that is in essence racism. So
then how does that become, because a critical part of the critical race theory is the fact that racism is systemic, meaning that the system is set up to propagate racism.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So how it works is a combination of a classism as well. So when it looks at color, and it also looks at the economic status of the group of individuals, and it kind of you ever lived in a city and the first time you drove into it, you smell something, and then after a while you went to go get something to eat, but you got used to the smell, and it just it became a part of your respiratory inhale and exhale, and you didn't even notice it, right? That's a little bit of how it works.
So systemic racism is a stench that we don't even notice anymore.
It is when we started dating seriously, and you told me that my shirts smelled really bad.
First of all, he just called himself out on that one. I wasn't gonna bring that up.
And I had to say, wait a minute, this is not how the way life is supposed to be. And when we started using different pods, different
Tide pods,
and so it's just something that is embedded in a lot of systems, and when it comes to like home loans and it is generational. So it's what we're taught. It's what people tell other people about races that now becomes their reality because someone else told them, hey, this group of people, these are the characteristics of them. They act like this. They're going to do this. Don't trust this. Don't do that. And so there's all of those characteristics that feed into why people treat groups of people the way they do. And it just so happens that a group of people get a bad rep, and sometimes those characteristics are perpetuated, and we get ourselves like, oh, come on, you know how hard it is for us already. Why are we doing that? Or but because a group of people are popular for those actions, and they're overgeneralized, and the people that are quote unquote the bad individuals, they get a long-term memory for what the bad things that they do. And then people have a short-term memory for the good things that they do. Because as a people, it's not the norm.
Right.
So this critical race theory looks at that. It shines a light on the cultural racism and the cultural norms that's connected to racism, and it asks you, why do you think like that?
And you think like that based off of the critical race theory because it's systemic. You might even, a lot of new allies, and if you're a new ally, welcome. There's been a lot of new ally bashing. I'm welcoming you into this conversation. If you have a question, ask it, because I don't want you to feel like you are new to the conversation and need to be an expert all at the same time. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of new allies are just waking up to the issues plaguing the Black community because of the systemic racism that the critical race theory outlines. It's been like my beautiful husband was saying, it's that stench that you lived in that town that you don't even smell anymore. Like, Glenda, do you remember when we were at True Religion and we were right by Farmer John's and it always smelled like pig? And after a while, you just don't smell it anymore, right? Yeah. But then I drove over there a little while ago and it was like,
yeah. So, and take that same concept, and when we travel, when we recently start traveling more, and we go to different nations, and it just doesn't have that same quote unquote stench.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, no one's looking at us like, oh, what are you doing here?
That's so
they're
true.
just, we go to, different South America, different places. You see people, there's no kind of colorism in the area, at least the areas that I've experienced. I'm big on saying from my perspective, right? I can't generalize for all, but where we go, it's just not that same cloud.
Yeah, we can go and travel and people don't have that stench in the air of systemic racism, like that's been embedded in the American culture. So sometimes when we travel, it's just like, we're able to.
Do we have to go home? No.
Right. Well, sometimes it does feel like that. We drop a burden that we don't realize that as Black Americans we carry every day as soon as we step out of our homes, because in that different country we're just,
they're like, oh, he's Puerto
Black.
Rican, or oh, he's Colombian,
people.
or
everyone looks like us.
Or even when we were in Spain, it was like, oh, because it's close to Northern Africa. And oh, he's Yeah,
and other countries do have their racial issues. We're not saying that America is the only one, but when you're a new ally and you've woken up to this is part of the reason why you might be just joining the party. You might not have smelled it before, and you're just starting to smell it.
Yeah, what the media does and what's going on is it's kicking up the fluffing up the rug, right? And so we definitely appreciate everyone that's on board and your patience to because what a lot of people are responding to, they're just hurt. So when you see certain memes, oh, now you want to help and all that, that's just the way that we are dealing through the hurt.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like when you get mad at me and
never does that happen.
For example,
I never get mad at him. This is a perfect marriage of no anger.
And then I'm like, hey, you want something to drink? Oh, now you want to give me something?
Huh?
So, you just have to look at it from, so this is the micro perspective, our household perspective, using this as an example of the whole, oh, now where were you at when I was over here crying? Oh, you was at the club. And but no, now I'm here. I'm here, and I didn't even stay that long. I was thinking about you, and and so from a macro perspective, that's what's going on right now. As far as that ally dynamic, so just work through it. A lot of us, everything's gonna be all right. One thing I do say is, understanding is gonna help everything out. We might not agree with everything and everybody. But the point is to understand everything and everybody so that we can be a little bit more patient moving forward.
So now that people have an understanding of critical race theory and systemic racism and that stench that is there that's being fanned, I think that's a great analogy. What can they do about it now that what are like maybe 3 actionable steps? Because a systemic problem needs a systemic solution, but those are the ones that feel like the most out of reach. Because you're like a systemic solution. Well, I'm only one person. How am I going to change a system? What can I do?
So one of the things that we can do is kind of I segued into it, and I mentioned the importance of understanding, the importance of active listening, and realizing that we can't be colorblind, right? You know, it exists, right? We've been, you know, a lot of people have been operating smoothly by not, quote unquote, looking at color. But when these big systems, when healthcare looks at color, and then there's and systemic racism there, in education, in financial industries, and businesses, and companies, and they don't even smell the stench, right? They just are operating culturally and by default, right? Now that we've observed that and we know that it exists, the next thing to do is listen to understand, right? Don't be quick to judge or offer some type of counter argument saying, oh, I don't see race. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you've been, you know, going through life with that filter, with that Instagram filter or those rose colored lenses. But this is something that is, it may not affect you, but it affects others. So I think that'll be
the first thing.
Yeah. So listen to learn, listen to understand, right? We can't agree with everything, but we can definitely agree to at least understand people's perspective.
I think that that's really great. And I know that that can be difficult because you might feel personally attacked. Like it's hard to be confronted with our own errors, especially when we didn't do it on purpose, right? Especially when we didn't mean to be hurtful, or we didn't mean to be insensitive, or we didn't mean to post that meme that was actually incredibly racist, but you didn't know it was racist. You just thought it was funny. And then when someone calls you out, you have a choice in that moment to make. You can be defensive, or you can say, oh, you're absolutely right. I'm still learning. Thank you for calling me out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that everybody always calls out people in the nicest way, but it's up to you at this moment in time as a new ally to have a little bit tougher skin. And I say that with love, right?
Yeah, I like that. Where I was just about, we're married, huh?
Yeah.
So
like for realsies.
I was just gonna say love. So if someone calls you out, like even if she calls me out, I know that she's calling me out. The bottom line and where it's coming from is love. Although it might not feel like love at the beginning, I'm like, but I know that at the end of the day, it's about love. And if someone is being called out, like, hey, that post was kind of insensitive or borderline, you know, racist, you know, according to the definition, right? A lot of it is just saying, hey, that person probably is lacking love. And if you lack love and you don't have love in your possession, how can I give it?
Wait, give that famous Brandonism. Hurt people do what?
Hurt people hurt people.
He's I think I'm gonna, y'all don't know him like I do.
Hurt people, and help people. And I know that sounds like a little like too zingy, like, whoa,
he needs a bumper sticker. He says it all the time.
But no, it's true. If I don't have any, if I'm not helped, if I'm not healed people heal people as well. If I'm not healed, how can you expect me to call you out nicely, right? I
think that that's a very good point, because right now there's a lot of people who are expecting to hurt people to educate them from a place of compassion, and not everybody has that capacity. There's a lot of people who are scared, a lot of Black people who are scared, hurt, angry, frustrated. And then you come to them and you say, but can you educate me? And not everybody's in that place. They are still hurt. And so you might experience that hurt, which is why with love, it's time to have a thicker skin. If you are truly dedicated to making a change, which starts first in your heart by listening, then you will be able to say, okay, I hear through that pain and I hear what they're saying, and I'm going to do better because I understand that just because I've now joined the conversation, unfortunately doesn't make everything okay, but it's a wonderful start. You just have to keep going. I'm going to pop into chat for a little bit. Yulia says, great question. Glenda's been talking about the Latinx, Latina community. I absolutely agree. It happens. Colorism and critical race theory is applicable to Black and Brown communities
and
as
the
well.
families,
And thank you, Selena. And Peggy, yes, listen. And Peggy is a listening expert, so.
Yeah. Right? You got to internalize it and use the sandwich method. Genuinely, I understand how you feel, right? And even when it's like, you can't understand how you feel, you're not Black. Insert race here. But just, I can imagine I'm empathizing with you. I might not have experienced racism, but I've experienced classism. When one class feels inherently superior than another class based on the assets that they have and the materials, right? But but they're poor at heart. And I've been wrongly treated. So you know how that feels, right? Just swap out the isms and tell that individual, like, I might not experience racism, but I've experienced this ism. I've probably experienced sexism, right? I've probably experienced, and so I have felt discriminated upon based on these things. And so I'm just trying to empathize with you, right?
Yeah, but make sure you empathize, but you don't equate. Because sexism is not the same as racism, is not the same as
classism
or ableism. All of the isms, that's what he means by ism. All of the isms are not equal. They mean that you felt particularly less than, but not necessarily in the same way. So make sure that you empathize, but then don't take over the conversation.
Don't say, I've been and it's hard to come up with. We have to be. That's why I love our love, because it takes love people to even, and it takes love people to remember that we have someone that has our back ultimately for us to be fortified to have these conversations. Right. And so remember that love. Write down all the things that you love about yourself when you're feeling bad. Open up your notes, read those before your day and all that. But I like what you said, don't equate the isms, because sexism, ableism, racism are different. No one's putting somebody's knee on someone's neck based on their class. Oh, you're broker than me. I'm gonna
This particular
you, right?
issue.
So there is a difference, and we want to recognize that and empathize with everyone, understanding that not all of them are they equate.
Before we move on from critical race theory, because I know that there's a couple of other theories you want to cover, I want to go back to the question that I had about systemic solutions. So tell me if you agree, disagree, or are going to remain silent. Some of the systemic things that solutions that you can help with would be voting. Voting is incredibly important. Depending on the state that you're in, it might be particularly difficult or easy to do that. If you've been watching the news right now, you might have to stand in line for a long time, but voting is incredibly important because systemic issues are helped by laws on the people that are in power. And if those people that are in power do not care about Black people and the issues that affect our community, then we will never be able to make forward change on a consistent pace. Also, another systemic thing that you can do is to talk to your children. Your children are the ones who, just like how when you were a child, you didn't smell that stench of systemic racism and you're awakening to it now because of everything that's going on, make sure that it doesn't take this type of environment for your children to have that same awakening. Raise them woke, basically. Raise them so that they understand what's happening, that they do see color, but that they understand that it's something to be celebrated, not feared. That they do speak up when they have a friend that makes that joke, that feels like they are white, so that they can have that same white banter back and forth that alienates or degrades another race or class or gender.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, if we're going to change the system, we have to change it from the ground up.
So it starts, I always say, show me your family, I'll show you your future, right? Or show me your friends, I'll see your future. And so it starts in that household, and it starts locally. And I'm gonna tie that back to the voting part. That also starts in the household and locally, right? Because those local decisions affect you the fastest, right? And so
don't just vote in the presidential election, and vote in all the elections, right?
You know, a lot of times I have listeners and followers that have these contrasting point of views when it comes to voting. Like, oh, you know, it doesn't matter. People are appointed, not elected. You know, people can choose to live under that umbrella, but when you do that, that is the same as doing absolutely nothing. So you know, you have nothing to lose. Okay, so you think the justice system doesn't work, the political system doesn't work. Sit there and be still, and it really won't work for you, right? So you have nothing to lose. Go out and vote for individuals that share the same values, morals, beliefs, and then you will not see members of populations being displaced, like Seneca Village, which is now Central Park, right?
Hold on a second. Tell a little bit about what Seneca Village is, and what.
Oh, so Seneca Village back in the 1800s which is now known as Central Park, was predominantly inhabited by African Americans, freed African Americans, and as well as Irish. And they had schools, funeral homes, hospitals, residents. They had a spring water. They were sustainable, but because of eminent domain, they were displaced and weren't giving they weren't compensated based on the value of their home. So a lot of them.
So the government came in and took their land.
Yeah, and put a
park there and didn't pay them what they were worth.
And I was connecting that to voting. If you're voting for people that are going to pass certain laws that are going to support this happening to people, right? You know, these are going to be the outcomes. But if you go and do research on people that are running for office, and you understand where their heart is, do they share a inclusive, a just and an equitable value base, or do they share a more opportunistic and dollar making value system, right? And that doesn't really have a color on it, right? That's just people just feel more and more more about the money, right? And so, but we see that in history where that's some of where critical race theory looks at. Like, it looks at the Tulsa bombings and
Black Wall Street,
and how that was.
Wall Street was basically very similar to Seneca Village, except less peaceably removed. It was burned. It was burned and bombed to the ground by the white communities that surrounded it, because they didn't want to see Black people have their own area to thrive.
And when we say, oh, was it a this race thing? It only is a race thing when that's the last thing that we can see to justify the treatment, right? Chinatown didn't get bombed, right? Other races that came and received loans to be here, right? Help, assistance to be here. That didn't happen. So when critical race theory is used to look at all of the other variables, don't get me wrong, so wasn't class. Okay, wasn't gender. Okay, it wasn't. Only thing left here is race, and that is what it shines a light on.
Yes.
When we turned over every stone, and we can't find the why when we turn every stone, but we found the why when we turned over the race stone. That is when we say, well,
yeah, it must be that.
Right. And so that's kind of, I just wanted to come full circle with
Yeah.
that. Hopefully that helped anyone.
Yeah, if anybody has any other questions about critical race theory, put them in chat. I'm seeing Gina compiling some questions for us now, so thank you so much. Next, I'm going to switch gears and move from critical race theory to talking about conflict theory. Can you explain what conflict theory is, and maybe tell us, I love that scent analogy that you used before. So is there, any other type of stories that you maybe can use to illustrate conflict theory and why that's an important theory right now?
Okay, for sure. And I just want to say, Glenda, we see you. I see some good perspective right there.
Yeah, and Gina's gonna put it for us in chat. We can talk about it at the end.
So the conflict theory, that's a theory popular within sociology, where that is a theory that looks at power dynamic, power struggle, you versus me, right? Young versus old, right? It looks at it. It also falls under the umbrella of the racism, the classism, the sexism, the ableism, because there's always this competition. There's always this struggle. There's this competitive nature that people see life through, and they believe that we need to compete to succeed, or we need to compete to coexist, right? And you know what? That's something that if you're born into, if you've always been competitive, if you always played sports, if you were the middle child, right? We kind of dive into that, and it becomes us. And again, when we use that word stench, you don't even know why you're so combative. You don't even know why you feel like you want to say, oh, I have to be better than that other person, rather than saying, congratulations, right? I want to teach me show me the ropes and how to climb them, right? Rather than shutting down and saying, well, I'm going to compete. And some people live in that type of atmosphere. I know I from the outside, I can look from the outside looking in now, because I had to change my state of mind. I grew up where we're always competing. Everyone's competing. Who has the latest this? Who has the new this? Who has this? And I'm playing sports, right? And we have debates. Some toxic group chats. You might need to find yourself ignoring those invites to those group chats, right? There's a lot of conflict theory that lives in there, but some people thrive off of it. So I want to just say.
So, but how does it apply now? So people are constantly needing to be better than. So what does that mean when we see, protests or police brutality? How does the conflict theory apply, and how can we better use it to understand the context with which we live?
Well, you definitely want to believe that we are not operating from scarce resources.
I believe there's abundance. There's enough abundance to go around for everyone.
So yes, and when you believe that, conflict theory does not exist in your world. Right? Because the only time we need to compete, or people feel that they need to compete, or this power struggle or power dynamic, or what about us? What about our lives? What about, is when we feel that helping another group of people is going to threaten us, or helping another group of people is going to take some of the portions or the rations away from us, right? It's back when, like, it's when I would when they would give my sister more attention, I'm like, well, what about me? And they're like, Brandon, it's her birthday. I'm like, oh. Right. And it's just kind of like, it looks at things and says, hey, we are not operating with scarce resources or limited resources. Everyone can be loved. We have what we have on Earth can be. We can help everyone with. Right.
So, and
what,
so
what amount of stuff? What amount of food that goes bad in our refrigerator? We can help.
Okay, as a chef,
Just kidding,
I take
not ours, not ours.
to that.
I mean,
that is not. That would mean I was using
speaking.
bad inventory management, which I am not. Anywho, what? Huh? Anywho, so if you're applying conflict theory and you're thinking that there's an abundance of resources, talk about what that means with the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter discussion. Why does someone feel the need to say all lives matter if you applied conflict theory to that?
Well, so you have conflict theory, which is the belief that that we need to compete to for society to move forward, right?
For scarce resources.
Because and then there's that. So if we are looking at ourselves as a whole body, right? If everyone has something to bring to the table, which is structural functionalism, right? It's looking at structural functionalism is a theory that I like to use a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the radiator, which kind of cools down the engine.
Mm-hmm.
If the radiator goes out, let's use the radiator is one race. The radiator goes out, then the engine, which is another race, they overheat. And then the car stops, so we can't move forward as a people, right? The exhaust, that mechanism. If somebody clogs up your exhaust, then you can't, you get
the fumes out.
Yeah. And so what happens that the carbon dioxide poisoning happens, right? That represents one race. And if your air conditioner doesn't work and it's summertime, that's right. And so structural functionalism actually says there's multiple moving parts moving together for a common cause and functioning together, right? And so if we look at a car like the like races and society, we need each other, and we shouldn't compete. Actually, you're good at this. Come with me. Let's bring that to the table. You're good at this culturally because in your culture, you've been trained and you've been developed to see life through this way, and we need that perspective. Come with me. Let's do this. Instead of saying, "Oh, you're different. I don't want to mess with you." So that's what. And so using that same example, like the car or the body, right? Because the body was the car.
Well, let's go with the car.
Okay, so I don't want to.
We already have the metaphor. Don't mix metaphors. You've already layered two theories on.
Okay, so yeah, I did bring structural functionalism into the mix as a lens to look at what's going on right now.
But how do both of them relate
to the all lives matter?
All lives matter.
So if I'm having a heart attack and I'm saying, hey, my heart hurts, my knee doesn't say, well, all body parts matter, or my organs, it isn't. It's like, no, let's take care of the heart.
Yeah.
So that everything
all
else,
of the blood rushes.
Yeah,
to the
and
heart.
then but
is that because they're not competing for scarce resources? Like, how does that relate to conflict theory?
Yeah, well, it goes back to the scarce resources. Oh, if we're putting too much attention on this group of people, it makes you say, well, what about us, right? But what we ignore when we do that is the issue at hand with this race, with us, with the individuals that feel that obviously are undergoing more hardships than others, right? When it comes to how the law enforcement is dealing with us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The same type of people that are recording these incidents can record other incidents. They're not just saying, well, the same incidents are happening, we're just not recording the killings of other races. Like, no, people are gonna bust. So it is, the studies show, the numbers are out there, and
that they're killing Black people at a higher rate than others. So what can we do about that? So we've talked about how when we're using critical race theory, we can educate our children, we can vote in all the elections, we can listen to understand. When it comes to conflict, and if the conflict is over, I feel like if I put attention on you, I don't get the attention on me. Or if I feel like I give you the resources in the town, then I don't get the resources in the town. So what are some steps that we can take, especially as new allies, to deal with that? What do we say? How do we get over the fact that there's abundance, or how do we stop conflicting, because that conflict is actually killing people?
As a people, we just have to collectively believe that giving is receiving. Giving is not you saying, let me give you this now, I don't have it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I know that's some type of dreamy type of proposal, but if you are voting for individuals that share that same value, belief, and morals, then you're going to have decision makers and leaders that are going to operate as such. If they evaluate the people that are going to make the decisions for you at a top level, do they share structural functionalism, where we're all together, we might be different, but we're moving together for a common cause? Or do they have this type of conflict theory type of lens where they feel that, oh, I'm sorry, survival of the fittest, we gotta be the best, and if somebody gets in our way, casualties happen, right? And so when I give you these lenses or these glasses, I like to say, now you have glasses that you can put on, and you have these radar to figure out what type of values, morals, and beliefs do these people, these leaders that are going to make decisions on your behalf, what kind of values do they have? Mm-hmm. And so you have to believe that with us here. So before you leave this platform, believe that there's we don't have to compete to succeed, because what that whole theory, we've been using it for decades, right?
And it hasn't even centuries. Really been.
And I think that it should be a moral shift, a value shift within our people collectively, and you get enough people on board, we can change the hearts of those individuals that feel that we're better than these individuals, mm-hmm. and we're better than that. We can change those minds. Yeah. But you have to believe it first.
Yeah.
And life will be different for you. I can only speak from my perspective, right? And so I know that education has granted me the confidence and the ability to understand individuals. And so I operate with them as such. I know how far to take certain conversations without them getting too riled up and it being some type of tension, while at the same time still being myself. So I feel like the first step is just educating yourself. And if you're here, then you are definitely taking those good steps right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we move on, because there's one other lens, another pair of glasses that we want to talk about with you. But before we drop the idea of conflict theory, I want to illustrate that conflict theory is the reason why there's economic disparity. And also the reason why that economic disparity has led to racial injustice, because most likely when you go to most poor communities, it's Black and brown people in those poor communities, and that conflict with it's not an equal fight, right? You have one side that the majority, which is the racial majority, which is white people. They've had the opportunity to have better education. They've been able to benefit from their privilege. They've been able to have inheritances from generations before them, including real estate, and that, they had that set up for them, and then they continue to be able to benefit from that. So that's one side, on the side of tug of war, right? Then you have another side that has been disenfranchised, brought here against their will, trying desperately to raise up, and then constantly beaten back down because of the color of their skin. And they have, in general, Black people have, in general, less access to education in the same way, and we don't have inheritances for our kids. Just as on a personal note, I started Flourish Marketing, and I became an entrepreneur, and we do investments in real estate and all of that because we were trying to break that generational cycle where Black people don't leave anything to our kids because we don't have anything to leave. We leave debt, and we leave problems and generational curses, which I won't get into. I'm not having a spiritual discussion right now, but I'm not having a woo-woo discussion right now, but we leave a lot of things to our kids as a whole, and I'm wanting to break that for our family line. So that's why I got in, became an entrepreneur, and I'm doing something that I love. So, but that's not a lot of Black people's experience. So you have those two sides conflicting in a tug of war, and it's not a balanced tug of war. So if this is the white side and this is the Black side, the white side takes it in a conflict. But if instead we were both working together and trying to pull in the same direction, pull forward with similar resources, similar access, not as much economic disparity, then as a people, which is what Brandon was saying, as a people, we will move forward more effectively for the entirety of our society. So when we're talking about conflict theory and you're thinking about ways to not play a role in that tug of war game, another thing to think about is, okay, how can I reach out and help the other side? And how can I reach out with even an ideological bridge, a compassionate bridge? What type of donations can I give to Black Lives Matter? How can I work with my local homeowners association to make sure that we're not discriminating against people moving in to our neighborhood? What can we do to understand the area that we live in your sphere of control so that you aren't playing tug of war anymore? You've dropped your rope, and instead you're taking a step back, looking at that tug of war game and saying, wait a minute, this isn't right. We shouldn't be pulling in opposite directions. We should be pulling together. Those are some of the things, in addition to what Brandon was saying, that you could do as part of not participating in conflict theory, and instead looking at the world from a structural, functional perspective.
Yeah, and then look at character. Be a good judgment of character, right? Don't make overgeneralizations or oversimplifications based on what you see, right? Because you got good people and bad people in all shades, right? Mm-hmm. And so make sure that you definitely keep that in mind and look at all the variables. I see. I wanted to go back to Glenda, with it being how hard it is to speak out, and how culturally we've been taught, or we've been nurtured into what you said, snitches get stitches. And so not a lot of people speak up for individuals. A lot of times your presence in the context of injustice, it's helpful. Yes, right? So absolutely. If I see something happen in the street, I might not say, babe, I'll be back. And then I'm not gonna be like superhero, and next thing you know, start limping back to her like that didn't work out too well. But I would stand there, right? I would just stand there, right? Just that's some classroom management, if you will, that I'm using a technique when students are talking, and I don't say nothing. Just go over there. In your presence, they're like, oh yeah, so page 2, and it's the same. It makes people that are doing something wrong uncomfortable when your presence is just there. You have a group of people that are just there, and they know that, oh, somebody else is here, and they're a witness to my injustice and something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have the exact answers, but I hope that help in response to that.
Yeah, so I just looked at the time. It's 11:54 Pacific time. So we're the call is for 90 minutes. So I want to leave about 30 minutes for questions, but I do want to get to our last
Okay.
theory, which is symbolic interactionism. So why don't you explain that and explain how that relates and what people can do if they're looking at this from a symbolic interactionism perspective?
Oh, so in symbolic interactionism, that's a theory that is used that I use to help me understand individuals, right, and how they socialize and why they make the decisions they make. So symbolic interactionism, it argues that depending on how we were socialized, culturalized, raised, depending on our geographic location, depending on what schools we went to, um, what foods where we frequent the most, depending on how all that socializes us, we see the same things in different ways, right? We see
The same
the same
situation.
situations from a different point of view. But why do we see things from a different point of view is because of what I mentioned earlier. um, it depends on where we were raised, how we were socialized, culturalized, and nurtured, right? If I was raised on a farm, I would have certain perspectives about certain issues that connect to me and connect to my norms and my values because of what I've experienced on a daily basis. If I was raised in the city, right, and in those norms and that fast-paced environment, I would have a different perspective on life. Now, bring religion. I don't think we didn't mention that too much on this chat, but bring religion into it and how people, it's a strong belief system, right? And different belief systems and how those factors influence our decision making and our views on matters that are happening in society. So symbolic interactionism is you looking at your culture and how you were raised, socialized, and nurtured to view a symbol and understanding that depending on how another person was culturalized, they're going to look at that symbol or interact with that symbol differently.
So
Hence the
like a
word
symbol,
symbolic interactionism. We interact with that symbol different.
so like the symbol of blackness. So I look at this lovely man and I see handsome, sexy, intelligent,
Hey, I'm feeling
cute
uncomfortable right now.
man, right? And when I look at other black men, I see black men. They're like, they look like me. They're family
Yeah,
members. They're
yeah.
whatever. They're just black men. But I'm a black female. If a white person were to look at black people, depending on how they grew up, they might see something totally differently. That's why and not all white people will have the same background, right? So if you grew up in a diverse community, they were just like, oh yeah, it's black guy, it's whatever, just like the Indian guy that's down the street, it's whatever. But if you grew up in a household, again, going back to talking about how your household really matters, you need to talk to your kids. If you grew up in a household that never talked about black people, they didn't know black people, they could be fearful of the unknown once they interact with them. Or if they grew up in a household or an area that was overtly racist, not covertly racist, then they would see a black person as an immediate threat. And that, my friends, is what we're seeing on TV. That when I look at George Floyd, when I look at Breonna Taylor, when I look at Tamir Rice, when I look at those black men, boys, women, I see people. Other people see threats. Other people see sluts. Other people see property. Other people see idiots. Other people see something just based on the symbol of blackness.
That's what that symbol means to them. They don't see the symbol of love of they don't see the symbol of an ally. They don't see the symbol of someone that can add some value that you can take from the situation, right? And so where does that come from? It is embedded culturally, and it also bringing it full circle to critical race theory. It looks at those norms. It looks at those society norms, right? But it starts with those household norms. Remember I said, show me your family, I'll show you your future. And now show me your friends, show me your future, because your kids are spending hours away from you at school. Who are they
hanging out
rubbing
with?
shoulders with, and who are they learning from to fit in? Because there's that factor. You want to fit in with these people at school because you don't want to be the teacher's pet, or you don't want to be in the out crowd. But what's the in crowd doing? They're probably making it being rude to people, the cool, being mean, cool, right? We see it in movies all the time. So be careful on how you're culturally nurturing the people around you. You might not have kids, you probably do, but they're still looking and they're still learning from you, even though they're rolling their eyes and saying, oh yeah, they're listening, they're looking. Mm-hmm. And so we just have to be the example and make sure that they're being nurtured, socialized, and culturalized in a way that when they interact with the symbol of an African American, of a person of color, of a Latino, a Latinx, of a Middle Eastern, Asian, anyone, when we interact with that symbol, specifically right now, the African American symbol, they are more open-minded and they're not judging based on some culture or system that that they've been exposed to.
Mm-hmm. And some symbolic interactionism, any symbol changes inside of your heart first. Check yourself. What do you really think? Pay attention and be aware of your own thoughts. When you go out, when you saw me for the first time, what did you think? If I met you and I was standing on a stage and you came to my session and you're like, oh, did you do that?
How did you interact?
How did you interact with the symbol of me, a very tall Black woman standing to talk to you about marketing? Did you go like that? Why? When you saw, my husband and I sitting here as a very loving Black couple, what did that symbol mean to you? And it's not to judge yourself, because self-judgment will shut it down. Self-judgment will take you to a place of guilt and shame. And don't go that place, because that's a place of immobility. But just be aware. So that you're like, oh, I was kind of taken aback. Or when I did see George Floyd, I wasn't jarred. Or sometimes when I know that I have a bias I can't get out of, I change the person in front of me. So I think of, well, what would my reaction have been if George Floyd were white? And so I imagine like watching that video with a white face. And then maybe you're like, wow, I'm super angry now, or wow, I have this feeling, this should not be.
You're not numb anymore.
Right. And so you might need to play around with your creative imagination a little bit when you're trying to change how you interact with the symbols of Blackness. And Black people, I don't know if there's any of y'all here listening to us right now.
But thank you
if you are. Black people, be careful of your own interaction and your own symbology that you put onto Blackness. A lot of the discussions that we are having are about educating people on what it means to be Black in America. And all of those discussions start with oppression. They start with slavery. They start with disenfranchisement. They start with the negatives. And that is not how I look at myself as a Black person. I look at myself as descending from royalty and scientists and philosophers and change makers and people who caused global change and evolution in some of the highest ranking societies of the time in their planet. So that's how I interact with myself. And that's the standard that I hold myself to. Because if you hold yourself to the standard of, well, our people weren't let out of slavery all that long ago, so I'm doing okay. That's okay, but that's not the standard. The standard is greatness. The standard is self-love, and the standard is love for each other as Black people, and we won't be able to move forward unless we're able to get to that place. Okay, with that said, We have some questions for you. They've all come from Zoom. If you have any more questions, type them in the chat, type in the Q&A, type them in Facebook Live comments. Gina is going to compile them all for me in this nifty little Google Doc, and I'm going to read them to our resident expert. So the first question, and there are several questions from Glenda. Thank you, Glenda, for being super engaged. I really appreciate it. Glenda asks, as a Latina, I encounter racism every day. The difference is that I was born and raised in South Central, so I've been exposed to the African-American community. I think due to that, I can relate to a lot of systemic racism, but some of my family and friends do not believe in that. How do I reply? That's basically, I think that systemic racism isn't real. It's not a thing. What should she say to her friends and family that believe that?
To start that conversation, I always would try to have a conversation with the leaders of that family, people that I know that other family members listen to, right? Because if you can get to their hearts, then it's more of a chance that people that look up to that family member, they will start to change their heart as well, right? So get that person on board, when you go to that family reunion, or when social distancing starts to loosen back up, and just help them use one of these theories that we mentioned today: symbolic interactionism, critical race theory, right? You can Google Scholar, any of those things, and start by saying the reason why I feel that there's systemic racism is because I've been socialized. I've experienced that. I've been nurtured to experience this reality for myself.
And give examples that you've experienced.
And I understand that, and I understand that you might not see this systemic racism because you've been either desensitized to it, or you may refuse not to see it because it makes you uncomfortable. But here are some examples, like you said, of how it exists, right? I like what's the show? Adam Ruins Everything.
Adam Ruins Everything.
Right. He talks about redlining. He's a white guy that is dapper, and he uses skits to talk about and debunk certain things that we've been told in right, in society. And so one of his episodes was on redlining, and redlining is the overt discrimination of housing and receiving loans and letting people move into certain neighborhoods and designating certain resident neighborhoods that just so happen to only be for people of color versus not other races. So sending them YouTube videos that are quick, like couple of minutes, because people wants things fast right now. We live in the how fast can we do it, the microwave era. So just sending them stuff like that and wrapping it up with love. So I'm just sending this with love. Check it out when you can. This is an example of what we were talking about regarding systemic racism. And that's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
And so I hope that kind of helped. So,
Yeah, for sure. I think that was great advice. I think it was great advice. Yulia asks, hey Yulia. Yulia asks, do you think some of the resistance to equality then is the fear that if Black people are treated fairly / not feel the burden, then the burden will be lifted from them and the burden will then be felt by someone else? Do you think that some of the resistance to equality is the fear that if Black people are treated fairly, and then they no longer feel the burden of being treated unfairly, then that burden will just be taken off of Black people and probably put onto most likely another minority group?
That definitely will exist as long as we collectively operate under the perspective of conflict theory, right? There's always somebody to pick on, right? It's almost like it trickled down, even in a family. The oldest sibling, and then nobody talks to my sister like that but me, right? And then so now everybody always has somebody to pick on. I definitely can see that being we predicting that something like that happening if we don't change the fabric of the and the values that we believe that, you know what, we can all coexist based with our differences, because with those differences we are that much better as a people. Once we are living through that perspective,
Which is
I
the
don't think
structural functionalism perspective.
yeah, that helps us understand that perspective, that theory. I feel like we won't have that to worry about. And when I say actionable changes, this goes back to identifying which decision makers, leaders, political figures operate under a belief, a value that we can all work together because we're that much better together.
Yeah.
If you have somebody that operates under the, all right, let's fix this problem for this group of people, but now that group of people is just going to hurt another group of people,
that's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
I think then that goes back to what we were saying before about this being truly a heart issue. So you cannot say that you are championing LGBTQ rights or championing, that's a hard word to say, championing Black rights, Black Lives Matter. You can't go up and support the Dreamers only. This is about supporting the fact that human beings have an innate right to live, and in the United States, they have an unalienable right to be part of a functioning and collaborative society. Hey, Amy, thanks for coming back. And that's good because we're about to answer your question. So I think that, you know, I am a little woo-woo. I'm a lot woo-woo, actually. Y'all just don't really even know. But I come from a heart-centered place. If I see someone in pain, it doesn't matter what the pain is. Let me help you with that pain. And I don't view pain as then transferring from one to another to another. I do believe if we're all surrounding the pain and the issue with a loving, understanding, compassionate place, that the pain dissipates, it doesn't jump. And that's the place that we're trying to get to. That's why allyship is so important, because you get enough allies, there's no place for the negativity to go. It just goes out. And that negativity doesn't need to jump onto another group. I'm not sitting here saying Black lives only matter. I'm not saying that when, you know, my Latina brothers and sisters are standing up for immigration reform, that I'm not going to be with them too, because of the pain. I'm standing up for human beings and humanity and people's right to live and without having to validate their own humanity or right to occupy the space that their body is currently standing on. That's I think why I am hoping that the more people that adopt a perspective similar to that we can have a more intelligent kind of conversation moving forward.
Yeah, because right now, when people are hurt, they feel threatened. They feel they have to fight because their back is against the wall. And the only thing that, you know, war is going to do, it's not going to bring about anything, because you're going to always have a group of people that are resentful. And it's just a matter of time before that group of people starts to rise up. So at the end of the day, you know, all this, the stuff, the conflict, the war and all that stuff that's going on, it's not gonna really take us anywhere. It's like, you know, it isn't. We know that as mature people that it's not, that's not going to do anything. So
I agree. Then now we're getting to your question, Amy. What are some things people say or do that may feel isn't offensive, but it actually is to you?
Probably. Well, wow, that's really insightful for someone that you say you went to, you grew up where?
Yeah.
And it's almost like people they want to keep you, they want to put you and keep you in a box based on a stereotype in sociology, an oversimplification or generalization based on certain characteristics that you keep seeing.
They want to keep their symbol intact.
Yeah, they want to interact with, and then I'm going to bring symbolic interactionism based on, back into here. So they want to keep interacting with the symbol of a Black male in a certain way, and so they're surprised, and so they don't know how to. They're still dealing with that, and so they communicate it in that way, and that it's kind of offensive.
But instead of accepting you, they're trying to protect their symbol.
Yeah, and it's offensive, and they don't know it, or maybe they do. Some of those no filter people, team no filter. I say what I want. But I understand where it comes from. So again, a lot of my armor comes from understanding, and comes from empathy and education. I feel like those characteristics weren't. If I didn't have those tools, or if I didn't have that armor, I would be this exposed organ that's always getting taking things in a bad way and lashing back out, and
Yeah, I know for me, some of the things that I find offensive usually have to do. I know you guys have probably heard this. I have questions about my hair, and it's not questions. It's just like, so is that yours? Does that do that on its own? Don't touch it. But can I touch it? Can I this? It's like, I don't know that about your hair. And I know that it's like so new and exciting, and I love my hair, but it is offensive. I'm just like, oh no. Or I pride myself in words. I love words. I love reading. I love talking. And so yes, the adjective of eloquent often applies to me. However, when you tell me that I'm eloquent or well-spoken in a way that sounds oh so shocked and surprised because I am a Black woman.
Come out of your mouth. I thought you were gonna be like, yeah.
I mean, part of what I do is literally speak for a living, but people are still surprised when I am able to speak intelligently about topics. And I, my personal experience, my Aleya Harris experience, not experience of all Black people, is I went to private schools my entire life, from preschool through university. I went to the University of Southern California. Fight on, go Trojans. I've been trained on how to write and read from the best, right? So why would you expect that all of a sudden now I would speak with what you think your symbol of a Black woman needs to be?
In response, though, I like what you said. That's your experience, right? But it's not the experience that they have interacted with, or what media or what TV portrays, right? Because a lot of times, different races, different cultures, they learn a lot about people that look like us based on what they see in the media, who controls the media, based on what they see in Hollywood, who controls Hollywood. So that's another area that I did not mention, that critical race theory can be used to view that. And I think that if some change happens there as well, you'll start to, you'll interact with this symbol. I'm gonna use it as a symbol as, you know what, that reminds me of Aleya. Aleya, I know somebody that's, very confident in her speaking, well-spoken, tall, all of these symbols, that intimidates a lot of individuals as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Glenda, you had a follow-up comment. I remember correctly, if you're mixed, how do you feel about how people perceive you? So I am mixed, but not in necessarily the way that you would think. I don't have a white parent and a Black parent. My mom is German, Native American, Cherokee, and Black. My dad is French and Carib, which is
like mixed,
like stirred in the pot. French and Carib. The Carib are the native people of the Caribbean. So, but I'm very aware when I walk down the street, look at that Black chick. They don't say, let me look at all of her ethnicities.
Yeah, it doesn't. They don't have like those glasses that RoboCop or something have. Like
my 23andMe profile doesn't show above my head when I walk down the street.
Oh, she's right? Her dad's from Trinidad and her mom's from America. Like,
right. Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
Cops don't see that, unfortunately, too. You know,
they don't. So I mean, how do I feel about people perceiving me? They see a Black woman, I identify as Black. It's a lot easier than all of what I just said, right? To break that down for you. And when people perceive me as a Black woman, I'm proud of that. I love being a Black woman.
Because you know that the term Black for you, within that for you, it highlights all those values and how you feel about yourself that you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. It is when people that are Black and when America sees a Black person, it is when a Black person feels that, man, I don't think I should associate with this, or I feel like all of these negative characteristics that goes into being Black, right? And then it goes back to the sociological definition of racism. When you feel that a race is inherently superior or inferior to another, that's racism on yourself. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of that which is going on, that when people don't know how to feel about being Black because of the way people interact with that image. Yeah. But you interact with it and you see love, you see potential and members of society that can bring value to society, not just sports and entertainment and stuff like that.
But that was a choice, going back to what we said, like the same media that's available to white people about Black people is the same media that's available to Black people about Black people. So I had to make a choice to educate myself on where I came from and who I really am, and to be authentic and in line with that. Because if I fell in line with the portrayal of Black women in the media, I would need to be married to a white man to do anything with my life, to have any type of significance. And if you're married to a white man, power to you. I love it.
We like them curly hair babies.
My family looks like the Rainbow Coalition, so I am not against anybody you choose to love. If you're a Black woman married to a white woman married to, I don't care.
Love.
What I'm saying is, like, if you look at the media portrayal, it's like we cannot be anything as Black women unless we hitch our boat to someone in a position of power, which is usually a white man,
or something that validates
us. Or we are ghetto and ratchet and it's just I'm shown as uneducated, or the narrative is the slave narrative. Think about all the movies that you see with like that star Black people that win Oscars and are nominated. They're not celebrating our achievements in astronomy. We're not talking about the Moors in Spain. We're talking about slave movies. When you think about the history of white people, you see lots of royalty movies and royalty shows. You see kings and queens and dukes and duchesses and riches and just beauty and abundance.
Even in certain movies that depict certain even Northern African kings, they're and we know that what happens after the equator, you tend to get lighter, geographically as you go northern, mm-hmm. But like straight white, like
straight white. So when the media likes a story that comes from a Black country, an African country, they put white characters in it.
Whitewashed a little
like,
bit,
Elizabeth Taylor, I love Elizabeth Taylor, but Cleopatra did not look like that. So
not even the statues.
No, the statues of Cleopatra did not even look like that.
Oh yeah.
So when you're talking about what it means to be Black or Black female in America, just as new allies have to educate themselves, Black people have to educate themselves as well, because we have the same inputs and you have to make a conscious decision to see someone differently. For some of you, I might be the only Black female that you interact with. Go and find some other people. Go and find some other Black men, Black female, and build relationships with them, because that's the only way you'll be able to change your perspective, because I'm not every Black woman. I'm Aleya, and I like Aleya a lot, but she cannot speak for everyone. So go and build friendships that
But
are
she
genuine.
can motivate and be an inspiration for everyone.
He pumps me up.
She can wake up that kitten inside of you and turn you into a lion.
You know, and I just thought about when you said that was the Tiger King. I still think that show was hilarious. Okay, Glenda, we have a couple from you and then one from Eula, but we're gonna answer these quick. Okay, we're not gonna do this Harris style where we talk a lot. We talk a lot in our household, so we're gonna do like, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Glenda asks, what would you say when people say, so Black lives don't matter when they kill each other, so Black on Black crime? How come it only matters when cops kill them?
I would say that let's look at the why and behind those crimes, right? The reason why certain Black lives don't matter to certain Black people is because we don't see that our lives matter to anyone else. We don't see that our lives matter to law enforcement, right? And we keep seeing images and videos and being tortured and strung up since we're born, and all of the movies that and so after a while our self-worth makes us feel like, hey, I have nothing to lose, and the people that I have to fight against for these scarce resources, right? Conflict theory are my own people. And so first we have to understand that. And when you have that type of understanding, when you hear people that say, oh, Black Lives Matter, it doesn't matter to your own people. Try to find out why that exists, and remember the words that came out of my mouth. Remember that we interact with that symbol as well, that symbol of degradation and that symbol of hurt. And so hurt people. And so if I'm hurt, I want to hurt whoever is immediate to me. A lot. What's the crime rate for domestic violence is very high.
It's very high.
Right?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
If you're around people that look like you, when you get mad, when you're hurt, that's going to happen. That's just statistics. But once we start to see a change in those images and a change in society and the way they value us, when we matter to other people, then we'll have our self-value, right? Not everybody has a sense of value and self-value that Aleya and I have. So that needs to change, and sometimes it changes when we see other people starting to value us as well. That's just one way to look at it.
Yeah, I think that is a great way to look at it. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to do this quick, but I just got one other thing to say about that. Because when he was talking about the humanity of Black, well, he was talking about how we pull ourselves down, because remember, legally, before we were only 3/5 of a human being by United States law. So if you are 3/5 of a human being and you're told that you don't matter, you're going to believe that, and that still resonates in the minds and in the conflict that a lot of Black people have within our own communities.
Yeah, the racism is worse working against you at this point. It's residual racism, right?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this is a one from Glenda, and it's a loaded one, but a good question. I think that it would be good to think about in the terms of conflict theory and structural functionalism. For the Latino, Latina, Latinx community, I've been protesting since I was young. Most of my people have so many divided opinions and feelings about the Black community. I've heard, where was the Black community when our kids were put in cages? I think it is a valid point. Sometimes I have no idea to answer that. It shouldn't be, I will help them if they will help us. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I'm glad that I hear those words. I hear that. I understand that. Hey, where were you when we just were experiencing ICE and deportation and all of the things that were happening, right? And so why is it the thing now for us to ally and be, and offer you support, right? So I hear that, and so a lot of times, I even talked with one of my students, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty much numb to it because that's how I deal with it, because we just got hit with some similar injustice as well, and there was no support for us. So I hear you on that. I can only speak from my perspective and the friends that I've had. I've seen people repost, hey, let's go break the pictures of the youth and
The babies
the
in
babies
cages.
being taken away from their families because of being undocumented. I've seen that, and I'm knowledgeable of it, and I've seen memes and pictures say, hey, let's go help them, and let's go break. If we're really standing up for people, and we feel that that everyone that's down needs to rise, let's go help out these individuals. So I am a part of that community, but from my perspective, I just feel like a lot of other people just aren't knowledgeable,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not what they're seeing in the media at the moment, or it's not on their timeline. We can probably benefit from you going and sharing more of that with your friends, and having more Zooms like this that say, hey, there's this going on right now, but guess what? There's this is going on right now too. So let us help each other, and
Mm-hmm.
let us advocate for one another. So I definitely understand that perspective.
Yeah, and it goes back to humanity. If we're gonna stand up for Black Lives Matter, we have to stand up for humanity and human beings, and that every human is valid.
And also, and not to cut you off, my love, but remember when we said healed people heal people. So if I don't have enough in my cup to share, because right now I'm not healed, or I'm hurt, or we're experiencing, there's this Black Lives Matter movement, while at the same time there's nothing for you to share with me or support me with. I think that's what's going on. I think that kind of justifies what's going on with the Black and brown population. It's like, we're both experiencing and wrestling with our stuff right now, and so.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's an excuse.
Yeah, it's not an excuse. It's just I don't have it to give. Yeah. You own $1, I only have 50 cents.
Conflict theory. Scarce resources. Yeah.
But if you give your last.
But I hear you, Glenda, and yes, we can do better. I think that we can all do better at supporting each other, coming from a loving, compassionate place, and standing up for one another, or standing up for injustice when we see it. So I definitely hear you, and I thank you for that question.
Really?
Yulia, I think this is the last question we have. How would you articulate the difference between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation?
Cultural appreciation, I would to articulate that is, whenever you hear a song and you really like it, instead of just posting that song without appreciating the artist, you just kind of post it, and that's it, and it's passed off as your own, right? Or is passed off on as something that your culture had came up with. You're not really appreciating that art. You're not appreciating that hairstyle right? You're appropriating it. You are utilizing it as your own. So I would articulate it as such, right? Using that example.
So how would you feel about a white girl?
Just shout me out, that's all.
How would you feel about a white girl in cornrows and calling them boxer braids? Let's talk about that.
So appreciating that culture of that hairstyle is doing the research and saying, hey, I love this style, shout out to, where I got it from, or just a little hit. Or you can even give somebody a little tutorial, just a little history. African Americans, or people of color, or people with curlier textured hair utilize this hairstyle to protect and their hair, and to keep it oiled, because when you have it out too long, it can dry out. But when they use this style to protect and condition their hair, and I just want to say that's a cool idea, and I want it, and it's working for me.
So,
that's
but what
almost
happens
like
when
appreciating
what happens when you rename it? So because I remember when I first saw a white girl with boxer braids, I flipped the table like Jesus. I was like, what, a boxer braids? Because they're cornrows, but they took that style and they renamed it as if it were something that female MMA fighters had come up with on their own.
And that goes back to the media and what they decide to portray, and why, and what, and what image are they trying to perpetuate and uphold, and why do the communicators of that information feel that they cannot appreciate another group of people, right? And so I understand that, and so I don't, won't flip the table, or even looking at it from the male perspective. Like if certain cultures want to wear their clothes in a certain way, somebody can tell me right now, you're culturally appropriating this image, because this is the the dominant culture style of dressing, right? This is that rich leisure, you're wearing this brand, right? But it's a part of the culture. It's something that I've grown to see and become, right? And so it's not I'm not appropriating it. It's just who I am. But a lot of times people don't know the difference between what you are and what you're trying to be. Is this a Halloween costume, or is this something that you live on a daily basis? So I feel like when it's something that you're just trying to, if it's not your norm, shout it out, appreciate it in a certain way, right? Say, this is where I get it from, and this is the people that made it popular, but I like it. But it's up to you.
I like that a lot. Okay, we've gotten to the end of the questions, and I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you for those who are still with us. I appreciate that, and thank you for the wonderful questions and engagement. It's been amazing. We are still here for questions. If you do have any additional questions, feel free to email hello@flourishmarketing.co. Gina would monitor that inbox and be able to get them to us directly. You can also follow both of us on Instagram at Aleya Harris and
at Brandon.
No, your Instagram, dude.
Class culture. So just the word class, like classroom, and culture, spelled the way that it is in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Class culture. That's my teacher page.
Yeah, and Gina can go ahead and if you can stick that in the chat, the hello@flourishmarketing.co, at Aleya Harris, and at Class Cultures, and we would love to keep the conversation going with you. This conversation is one of many that I hope that you will have. We are just a happily married Black couple trying to help you understand sociological concepts of race. But this should not be the only conversation that you have, and I don't think that it will be. Right now in this news cycle, Black people are the hot ticket, right? It's the main topic of conversation, but don't let the news cycle determine your morals and your values and how you stand up. Let this be an awakening and a wake-up call to being an ally for Black people in America on a consistent basis, and making sure that the systemic nature of racism stops and ends inside of your heart and inside of your household. So with that, any other last words?
Thank you for joining in. Thank you for being a part of the conversation and valuing, we value your time and for valuing our input on this matter. Thank you for interacting, and thank you for much gratitude. Gratitude is our attitude.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.